Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Phil Boyden. I'll be taking you through the presentation today. I've been working within marketing automation for just over 11 years, starting with Eloqua, but also covering some work in Marketo, Adobe Campaign over that time. These days, I help vendors when speaking to customers and prospects around marketing needs and help demonstrate how the platforms can help with this. So a little bit about me. Seeing as you've been listening to for a while, I'm based in Poole, where I live with my wife, 2 daughters, a couple of cats, and some tropical fish. That's Scarlett in the top right picture, who's usually fairly quiet but likes to sit on my desk in the way of things. Our other cat is full Burmese, and she enjoys shouting when we're on call, so you might hear them. I've not always been in marketing automation. I was a musician until I was 40, and that was the reason I moved down to Poole to play for the symphony orchestra, but I also freelanced, and the bottom right is me on stage in Portsmouth with Belle and Sebastian. My wife was at the front of the photo, and the other people she knew in the strings, as opposed to actually taking a photo of the band she was there to see. That is Scarlett lying on my book in the picture, and then the top picture there is actually, that's where I live, but not exactly where I live. That's the really nice bit near where I live called Sandbanks, and I live way off to the top left of the picture in the town of Poole there. The headshot there is taken as I'd run across London in the rain to an Adobe event, and disappointingly, it's still the best photo I've got for me to use for any work purposes. So yeah, that needs improvement.
I'll add that to my to-do list, Phil.
Yeah, thanks. So quick overview of Sojourn Solutions. Simply put, we're a marketing operations agency with a global reach who partner with Adobe, Oracle, and Salesforce. The image on the left is a snapshot of our proven methodology where we look at marketing and sales alignment, not just the technical integrations, but the language, processes, stages, etc., to make sure the two areas of the business are pulling together, increasing revenue. We look at the wider data that could or should be used for marketing and how we can pull that into the right places so as to be used in the most effective way. Cleanliness, completeness, recency of data all comes in there as well. We then look at the effectiveness of campaigns and other ventures, so we can check results. Behind the scenes, we look at the people in the team, the skills they bring. Different technical architectures really need different skill sets, so this ensures efficiency in-house for you as you move between platforms. And we look at processes, business processes, data processes, marketing processes. All of these will have a bearing on the time taken to our campaigns up and running, and therefore leads flowing to sales and potential revenue being generated. Then finally, we look at the MarTech. But we have to assess those other pillars really to ensure the MarTech is going to deliver what it should, and so we can optimize the setup for you accordingly. Last thing here is predominantly B2B and B2B2C based companies. So although we have some B2C customers, for that reason, we'll focus more on B2B side here, as that's more my area of expertise. I would say these platforms are mostly aimed at considered purchasing decisions as against less complex consumer purchases. We've also added some tips for helping to evaluate maps towards the end of the webinar. The points will likely be scattered through as I'm talking anyway, but just to recap in one place. So if you go back over the recording, it should be simple to find. Okay, so now me and Sojourn, we'll hop onto the part where we actually look at the platforms. So we're going to look at direct capability comparison today between 5 platforms: HubSpot, Marketo Engage, Oracle Eloqua, Salesforce engagement, and account engagement. The last 2 were previously Email Studio and Pardot, so you may hear me slip and make a mistake and call them those original names every so often because I find it hard to get all the rebrands into my memory. You'll also notice, if you've been to these before, we've split out Salesforce so that it's in the 2 separate platforms, just because I found it easier to track that way. So we've also split the whole thing into sections, trying to group things together and hopefully make it clear that different areas are related to each other. So as we go through, we have got apps, etc. There's different ways of integrating the CRMs, other systems into the marketing automation platform. We'll look at capabilities for extending the platform in different ways and generally enhancing the functionality. Look at these when determining a fit for your business allows you to actually assess the ease of getting your full tech architecture working holistically. Data management and retention. We look at standard contact fields, how many there are, what availability, tracking activities. The platforms all track activities, but data retention policies are quite different. So we can have a look and see in this section, what best fits your marketing and sales cycle requirements. We'll then take a look at custom objects. This gives a flexibility to the data model. So whether you can edit direct in the platform, numbers of instantiations you can have in there. Custom objects allows the flexibility we need really to store our data in a useful way. And they can be connected to contacts and accounts. And then we can see exactly what we're targeting with our marketing efforts. The flexibility data model would need to match the capabilities of platform that you end up choosing. Running campaigns in the platform. Obviously, they all do this, but we'll look at simplicity, flexibility. What type of campaigns do you want to run? What are the options beyond the basic email campaigns, which are the bread and butter of the platforms? We'll cover scoring, available ways of scoring contacts, accounts, and prospects in the platforms, but we'll also look at some other bits there as well, not just the lead scoring models, but how other ways you might want to be looking at tracking people in the platform. And then we'll have a quick look at reporting and AI options and a few other things that you need to watch out for. Okay, so let's get into it. So there's a few things on this slide just to get us started. The year established, year acquired. These platforms have all been around enough to be established and for the owner companies to have a good idea of where they're going. It's really worth asking about roadmap and vision to understand the future of the investment you'll go with. Even if the roadmap isn't published, they'll always have a vision that they can talk to you about on the call, sometimes under safe harbor or whatever, so you can't tell others, but they'll have an idea what they're doing. Fiscal year end, if you're looking for a really good deal, any company has to be hitting its number at the end of the financial year. So larger discounts help the reps get the last few deals over the line just before the year closes. So bear that in mind if you're shopping about. Current market focus, all the platforms we're looking at now cover all business sizes, but in reality, what we need to look at is your use cases and then map that across to the technical requirements. The presentation here today covers the capabilities of the platforms, but doesn't tell you your own requirements. We can always help with that sort of thing, so give us a shout if you're looking for support there. Because the trims and plans, etc., all named differently, all different scalability, we've actually, rather than go through and mention these all the time, we're looking at, for simplicity, small, medium, and large. For the most part, we actually look at what's available in the large platform, but we will call it out on the slides as we go through for the different bits and pieces. Okay, before we deep dive right into the MA platforms, I just wanted to cover off the wider marketing cloud capabilities. Although we can look at best in class, and there's usually a way of integrating things irrespective of the provider, there are also advantages sometimes of looking at a single provider. Bundle pricing, no pointing your fingers when there's issues between platforms, and a single vision are just a couple of examples for that. If you're already looking wider than marketing automation, then it could be worth weighing up the wider cloud with each vendor, as well as looking at the standalones. Best in class as opposed to best in suite are often discussed when I'm talking to customers. So best in suite is where you choose the entire suite from one provider, and best in class, you're looking at buying them separately. One last thought here for me is make sure if you're looking at multiple platforms for one vendor, you ask pointed questions on the level to which they're actually naturally integrated. Sometimes two platforms from the same cloud are as much work to tie together as from two different clouds. So, just make sure that you're actually bundling for good cause. It's all a bit beyond the scope of what we're looking at today, but feel free to reach out if there's anything around these other platforms you'd like to have a chat about or anything in the future. Okay, so with that, I'll move directly on to the main event. So all the maps do some great stuff out of the box, but we always want to do more, and therefore we need to extend the functionality, whether that's to satisfy a single use case or add new channels to our campaigns. The numbers in the top row here reflect the certified or approved apps for each of the platforms. We can see Oracle has the most connected apps, but it's worth checking the apps against your needs, because if another platform just has the one app you need, it doesn't matter how many the others have got. Next here, we've got the API limits. These come into their own when a company is oh, sorry, excuse me. These come into their own really when a company has a lot of middleware, or if they've got standardizing process flows, extracting data into in a bulk way to push it to a data warehouse, other reporting platforms, something like that. As the platforms grow with the business, it's worth thinking on scalability. Make sure there is space to grow with the thresholds you're looking at. Performance can obviously vary drastically between the platforms because of these limits. If you're extracting 1 million records from each of the platforms, it would take very different times to complete that task, depending on the size of the data you can pull out at the same time or the number of calls you're allowed per day. If you're going to be using the API heavily for movement of data, make sure you understand the amount of data you're wanting to move, and then you can look at these numbers kind of a sensible way. Also, look at the amount of data you're moving, the daily limits and number of calls. It could be that you can get away with batch processes every so often. The piece we got at the bottom here is for integration of flat files. This can be really great for forcing a simple integration when middleware or development is prohibitive for budget. But if you want data to flow still in a more automated way, some homegrown systems can often read and write flat files as well, giving a neat way to tie things together if there's not actually going to be an out of the box or kind of pre-built integration. One thing I wanted to mention quickly here, because we're talking about integrating other bits and pieces really, is Adobe Connect. So Marketo is going to be adding Adobe Connect into their Marketo Engage platform as out-of-the-box functionality. So with that, you'd be able to run up to 10 webinars. So if you're on Marketo and wondering about whether webinars would work for your business, then that's a great way to test it without having to pay for 2 sets of licenses. But I should say as well that the integration apps for other platforms and webinars are usually free. So it's just the license of the platform you're looking at there for difference. Okay, so native CRM integrations. The native integrations are those that come out of the box with the product and not having to add extra apps in and stuff like that. Some are set up just by creating a user with correct access and switching the integration on. Others are set up and customized directly in the system. There's higher costs, obviously, for the setup of more customizable integrations, but there's also potential advantages because you can build exactly what you need and not just rely on the out-of-the-box performance there. Some platforms allow you to create bespoke custom objects through the integrations, and others simply give you a view of the Salesforce objects, for example, if that's what you're connecting to. One thing to point out here, Adobe is now partnered with Vertify, so it can handle multiple CRM integrations, which really opens things up for Marketo there. I've not used it myself, but I understand it is a no-code integrations platform, so it shouldn't be too complex. The error notifications here, so they can be a real lifesaver. I remember a system update in CRM causing integrations to break once for an Eloqua customer of ours, and the admin for the integration was automatically notified it kind of straight away, meaning that he could actually get straight on that and get it fixed. If there hadn't been any notifications, because this happened at a weekend, there'd have been some real issues by the time they came back in on a Monday morning. So that's, although it seems a small thing, I think it's quite important to have integration errors there. And the last row is talking about duplicate leads, which are covered by most platforms these days. If you have a think about your lead and sales cycle, whether you need to be updating leads, creating new, or a hybrid between those somehow, then whatever your needs, make sure to request an explanation or even better a demo of how the platform can handle this when talking to the vendors. Again, as with all the stuff we've been talking about and all the above, it's use cases mapping to your technical requirements are the best way of deciding what's better for you. You can also here ask for the latest information and what's going on, as the different platforms are always looking to improve things. So Marketo, like I said, has the Vertify thing, and they've also now got an integration with Viva, which is a pharmaceutical specific CRM. But the next release of Eloqua in a couple of weeks' time is actually, there's further improvements to the Salesforce integration app that they're running as well. So, there might be stuff coming out that's not quite out there or not publicly available for everyone to see and know about. So always ask, what the latest is. Okay, we're moving on to data retention and management now. I will look at the wider data model as well over the next couple of slides here as well. But the first one we've got here is database fields. It's just the number of fields available on the contact or person object. But do bear in mind, although the numbers are an interesting read, when we look at the wider data model with custom objects and accounts, it might not necessarily be that you need even all of the lower numbers of properties around here. The next one here is retention policy. So this, if you have a really fast sales cycle, then it's not much of a concern at all. But when a company is looking at prospects taking up to maybe more than a year, then to make a considered buying purchase, then you need to track stuff and cover that length of time, really. Getting a good overview of your sales cycle time and opportunity stage, etc., will allow you to look objectively at these numbers. I was talking to a company about Marketo Measure the other day, which is Adobe's marketing reporting tool for attribution modeling, and they had a 9 to 18 month sales cycle. So to track their prospects' interest and activity through the entire sales cycle, we need a longer retention period, or alternatively extracting data, holding it somewhere, pulling it into custom objects. So, all of that is going to add complexity to the implementation and make it harder to actually do your marketing. Database partitions are often allow different users to only have visibility of the contacts they should be seeing. That's based on companies maybe with different separate brands, regional separation of teams, or something else. If this sort of an area is a concern, as well as talking about kind of contact partitions, also ask about assets if that would be required. So maybe you've got several different brands and you don't want them going between assets, then you can get security in place around assets as well as things. So check all the security measures. Ask if you can create new or customized security groups, or whether it's a one size fits all. But also ask, in the demo, can you show us how that's set up, how we can update it in the future, just to see ease of use as you expand your company. Data management tools. All platforms have things in place for this one, but I want to just mention a couple of things here. It's often they can be used for, say you've got form submissions coming in or data that's being collected in an event. It's nice to be able to automatically clean these things up. So I would definitely ask the vendors when you're getting a demo to actually show you how those data tools work, how is it possible to clean this data so it flows through Eloqua, gets cleaned, goes across as clean data, maybe capitalized correctly for first name, last name. It's also clean for field mergers. Just get them to show you how that works and the simplicity of that. And then the last one we got here is field change history tracking, which allows you to track a field and maybe drop people into a flow based on that change. An example might be a customer who's not renewed, not responding to a salesperson anymore. If they get marked down as previous customer or non-responder, that might allow us to pick them up and just drop them automatically into some sort of win-back campaign in the platform. So yeah, useful just to be able to track those changes. Okay. Custom objects. These allow us to extend our data model, like I was kind of alluding to earlier. Gives us the opportunity to hold more complex data than available on the contact record. For example, subscriptions. It can be on a many-to-one basis. So this slide is kind of fairly self-explanatory, really, but I just want to talk about the difference between a custom object and a custom object record in case that confuses anyone at all. So say you have a custom object called purchase history. That would be a single custom object, but there could be 250 custom records of that just against the one user in the system or the one contact in the system. So a custom object is the kind of main holder thing, I suppose, whatever you want to call it. And then the custom object records is the number of instances of those you've got. Okay, so if we have a look at row 2 now, we can see the limits for the number of custom objects in the systems. Salesforce treats this a bit differently from the others. You can see that they actually have a certain amount of space available for custom objects as opposed to a given number of custom objects. But apart from that, it all matches across there. When you look at scalability and flexibility data model, remember, we don't actually need to hold all data in a marketing automation platform. We need the flexibility to hold enough of the right data to power segmentation. So again, we're back to use cases. Have a look at the data model, decide what pieces are relevant, both now for the future. On top of segmentation, we might think about the personalization and the data being used for that as well. So yeah, just have a look at what you really need in the platform and map it to that, as opposed to trying to boil the ocean. A last thought around data comes back to the pricing of the platforms. So some platforms charge based on the number of contacts. And so to be honest, a data cleanse prior to signing up to any new platform, maybe look at data completeness, recency, that sort of thing, and just get your contacts nice and streamlined before going ahead and purchasing. Right, campaign management, the basics. As we can see from this slide, the platforms don't really have a lot between them in some ways when it comes to the basics. We should really expect this because getting the campaigns out the door is all their kind of main reasons for being. What I would say here is that a lot of this is down to personal preference. People here at Sojourn are definitely wedded to their own platforms. And I've never actually set people off into a bun fight, but it'd be really interesting with the fight as to which is the best and the easiest to use. So I'd say look at use cases requirements, get your demo to really speak to that. and then see which of the platforms actually resonates with you most as you're watching these demos. Also ask questions if you think functionality might be missing. You can see here Marketo has a clone feature, for example, but depending on what your use case is for cloning, the other platforms will be able to show you something very similar or how they would go about that. So it's really worth gathering exactly what you need and making sure that everyone shows you that. Just moving down. Yeah, another thing to bear in mind at this point is changing platform is a good time to assess your current efforts and see what is and isn't working and start afresh with what's definitely working and leave the other stuff behind. The reason I'm saying this is we had one customer and had over 100 different campaigns they were running. Having assessed them, we worked out they could be templated, and it came down to under 10 kind of templated versions of those campaigns. Saved them over 3,000 hours. So if you are getting to the edge of what you're managing in your platform, strip it right back to what you know you definitely need, see if there's any ways of kind of getting that better. And if you are still going to move platform, make sure you start with that kind of fresh approach in mind.
We need to have a cheer button for that one, Phil.
Do we?
I'll have to look for that next time. We'll add the cheer button.
Okay, great. Perhaps everybody could raise their hands and put them down again as you get the Mexican wave going on.
I'll be prepared.
Thanks. Okay, so multi-channel. Obviously, all the platforms cover email. That was their initial premise, but there are lots of other things to be asking. And again, it's worth thinking of the skill set of your team and the use cases and requirements. Ask beyond what you're initially being shown as well around these things. So, for example, you can see the emails being built. It's using a drag and drop tool. It's straight into a template. It all looks really simple. Ask questions along the lines of, if I need another section in my template, how do I do that? How do I go about that? Because some of them, you can just drag a new section in. Others, you have to go back to HTML coding and actually build a new section to that template. I mean, it will be as simple as copy and pasting, but you'd still really need to be able to read that HTML code to work out what you're copy and pasting to add the extra section in. So yeah, always basically ask what they're not showing you, I suppose I'd say in the demos. I'm going to hate myself for that, because when I'm doing the demos for some things, I'm now going to
except for Phil's.
Yeah, don't ask me. So other things as well. You want a lot of marketing forms on the website. Ask how they can be added in. Some platforms just allow you to extract the HTML code and do that. Others give you a little snippet and the form automatically appears. So just check how it is. If you're using WordPress, ask it how other people have integrated to WordPress. Just ask every question for your requirements. So it feeds into the decision you're making. So use cases, I'm going to say that a lot, can also power the extra channels in your platform. You see a lot of the extra channels are with paid apps, so you need to be adding customized extensions to the platform, even if they're productized in some way. Ask you, for example, if there's any single provider that can cover all channels that you want to add into your platform. And also think about the audience. I was talking to a company recently, and because they wanted to add in SMS, and the reason was because, in fact, their customers, based on where they were, didn't have data available, and they had some old handsets and that floating around in these places, and basically there was no way of getting anything to them through data. So SMS was their best way of communicating. So, think about your audience. Just don't kind of tag along with the next best thing. Final thought here on channels is that the platforms, although they have social integrations, they don't necessarily replace other social tools you might be using. An example of that, so LinkedIn integrations may include auto completion of a form. It might involve linking it up to LinkedIn Campaign Manager, something like that, and pulling that information into the system. So make sure you know exactly what it is you want to use from social platforms here. So I have been in places before now, we've been gathering requirements that they want to do social, and you're not going to get what you need if that's what you're telling them at the time. Last thing as well, they don't replace those other tools. So if you're using something like Octopost, then that can actually automatically get the information pulled in. You can use that for further segmentation, see how people are reacting to. You can use it for lead scoring as well. Which brings me fairly neatly on to the next slide, which is scoring.
It's like you planned it.
Yeah, you'd have thought. You would have written notes and stuff. So lead scoring. It's one where, again, feel it's actually worth laying out your use cases and asking different vendors to add this into the demo. some scoring scenarios, for example, actually might work better with a decision tree rather than using the actual lead scoring mechanism you've got in the background. I had a prospect the other day that I was doing a demo for, and basically they had form submissions coming in, and the requests that came in, if they matched a certain set of criteria, we'd actually push those people straight onto a dialer team so they could get on the phone and call them up. If we're relying on lead scoring in the background and the daily update and the stuff like that, it'd be an arbitrary amount of time before that lead score was recalculated, so therefore potentially causing delays. So what we actually did was show them how we could meet their requirement by building an actual decision tree into a program, so you could actually see the flow of if they're hitting all the criteria when they come out the other end, added to a shared list that goes straight out to the dialer team. So whatever it is you're trying to score, basically what I'm saying is make sure you're telling the vendors, here's what we're trying to achieve, because it might be there's different ways of achieving that, not just looking at lead scoring models. Other thing about lead scoring, oh yeah, actually there's another customer before I go on to that, sorry, who had, they actually needed form submissions to go through. And if the form submission took anything after 15 minutes to go through and hit the sales team, they're actually at a 50% lower chance of closing the deal because it was a real fast fire one. Again, if we look at lead scoring here, it would be too late. So even if a company is, even if you're thinking, right, I want people coming in, I need to know they're a hot lead, there's going to be times when you just need to ignore the lead scoring, just get that lead over. We managed to actually use an app to get those leads from form submission in front of sales in under 30 seconds, which actually boosted them up to kind of 95% conversion rate. So yeah, I suppose my point is it has to be a use case is brought to the discussion and not just whether they do lead scoring. Another thing to bear in mind is how the scores are manifested. So some platforms give a single score, others go with a co-dynamic score, where there's two parts to that score. One will be the profile of the company and whether you want to do business with them, and the other would be their engagement score, which it shows how engaged they are and whether they want to do business with you. So you can decide, which of those two is best. Do you want just a single score or something that has two parts to it, and what suits your needs? And then another good one here is degrading of scores. Some platforms can degrade scores by checking scenarios. For example, give 100% of the score if they filled a form in the last couple of days, 80% if it's in the last week, 50% in the last month. That can be simpler than actually having a program running in the background that adds or detracts scores based on scenarios. Might be easier to maintain, but again, get your use cases over and ask them to demo how that would work. Multiple scores can be really useful for different brands, products, etc. And account scoring is great if you've got an ABM marketing approach. One thing I would say here is ask if there's other ways of gauging interest. An example might be salespeople getting an alert if someone from their top X accounts is actually on the website. So scoring is a great way to gauge if a lead is ready for sales, but some of the platforms offer other tools that are actually going to help the sales guys again. So ask what else is available. Yeah, armed with your use cases and ask the right questions, see which of the platforms user interface actually works best for your needs as well as they demo how to do these things. Okay, moving on to the warning, caution, other things to look out for slide. So when you see a demo, you're basically going to get the all singing, all dancing version. So it's important to not just understand your requirements covered, but also the number of people who can access the system, which pieces are bolt-ons, which pieces maybe not necessary from day one, but can be requested at the start and switched on later to take advantage of any new customer discounts. So one situation, I was talking to a team of 2 people, and that was the entire people. They were the users, the decision makers, just these 2 people. So there was an assumption as we were going through the cycle that these that something similar in sales, a really small company. It turned out these 2 marketeers were actually creating leads for over 200 people in sales. So what we were looking at is probably quite a small license on this occasion. When it came into sales users and extra tools and stuff like that, it really pushed the prices up. So be really clear to the vendors how many people you got sitting where, how many licenses you need for what, how many, sometimes it's called seats, how many seats at the table. Reporting. We'll need to prove our efforts are really doing what they should do, whether that's proving marketing generated revenue, number of leads converted, whatever the KPIs. It's easier to prove your worth with good reporting. I just want to point out here that Marketo, I don't want to be misleading in that one. So Marketo Measure has its own reporting. on how the campaigns are running and stuff like that. But Visible is actually it's their or Marketo Measure, I should say. Sorry, it's another item, but it works with any of the marketing automation platforms, and it basically is a really good attribution tool. So it's yeah, it's called out there because it's a really good tool, as opposed to, I'm not saying that Marketo doesn't have reporting unless you have an add-on, but for the sake of looking at the big BI tools, then you know, Data Armor, Marketo Measure, and Insight sits within Eloqua anyway. So but yes, just worth having a think about. You don't even need to you can even pull anything to Power BI. So however you want to be reporting, again, ask what the options are. It might be you already have a tool in place. Where have I got to?
Row 4.
Row 4, thank you. Yeah, artificial intelligence. So again, just ask what's involved. Some platforms with AI have kind of send-time optimization. Just make sure you're asking all the right questions, what it is you want to get from AI, and see what is available and what you actually really need to be adding to the platform. It might be that for some AI stuff, there's other vendors out there who do plug into these platforms as well. So it might be worth just shopping around and seeing what your requirements are and how they can best be surfaced. Then the last thing really here is sandboxes. So come along, think about what your sandbox requirements are. If your company has a really strong rollout policy and you need to build everything in kind of dev, test, and then production, then it's really worth seeing how simple it is to do that with the different vendors here, because some of them, for example, you can actually take your production environment and pull it into the sandbox, play in the sandbox, but you can't actually do it the other way around. So it's really worth trying to understand what you need from your sandbox to make sure you're getting the best service out of that. And I think the last one really to talk about here for me is modular functionality. So you'll be going along, there's going to be elements of the platforms that you really want to use and other bits that aren't of interest to you. Ask the vendors if there's a way of having a lower package, but with an extra bit added on. It might just save you some costs rather than go straight for the large or standard or whatever it is that you're looking at using there. So moving on, just a quick slide. With everything, with the drive around environmental, social, and corporate governance, or ESG, when thinking about investments for the future of the company, it's worth bearing in mind this will be becoming more and more of an important issue. Ask the provider about hosting, carbon offset, and how they're putting other measures in place around this topic. And it's cloud software after all, so with the software being hosted, then it's the vendors that need to take responsibility for a lot of these things. Hoping to put something a bit more coherent a bit in place for this for the future as you get some things in, but the just been to a couple of events where everyone's talking about green, so I just wanted to make sure that we'd cover that. And remember, we're looking for this when I talk about green, not necessarily this one. Okay, so I just want to do a quick summary of things to think about now, because we kind of dotted, obviously use cases pretty high up there, but what we can have a look here, so map it out. So we mentioned this a lot, but we have to make sure we're starting from our own use cases, strategic goals, and then mapping that to what we need the platforms to do with us. We also have to think about other things as well, existing tools we use, if we're keeping those, need them integrated, processes, if we've got some manual process that we're hoping to automate as we move platforms, is it the right time to address that? Also, please remember what skills you have in the team. If you've got people that are good with SQL, people that are really good with HTML, people that are good with JavaScript, then you don't need the necessarily all the drag and drop stuff, and it might be different platforms better suit your needs. Understand the pricing. So from the pricing point of view, just check, is the main pricing based on volume of sends, contacts in the system? What are the overages if you grow quicker than expected? Can you go over and add to the costing incrementally as and when needed? How many seats are included for those kind of different licenses? There could be some really advanced capabilities that are a must-have once you've seen them that come bundled in for free, but just check, is that, if that's actually only comes with 3 users available to use it, it might be actually no good overall. How much of what you've seen in the demo is actually included in the package that you think you're buying, and which elements need to be bolted on, which ones are pushing the price up? Does all the functionality make sense from day one? A good example here is AI. So if you're using AI for send time optimization, we haven't actually sent any emails yet, then there's no data in the system for you for this AI to actually be working on. So, ask if you can actually have that deferred by 6 months. So you built some data up first and only pay from then, but add it to the kind of bill of materials at the start so that you know you've got those new user discounts coming in. Okay, importance of integration. What CRM are you using? Is it covered? To what extent is it covered? And is integration fit for your needs? How user-friendly is the integration? Do you need an IT team or a specialist to update it if you want to add another field? If it's not covered, are there tried and tested third-party options or apps, meaning that anything not native actually has a good way of connecting anyway? There might be connectors around. Is there middleware that actually has connectors that the company have used before, where you can actually simply go in and use that, and just anything where you're not starting from scratch, basically. And then finally, if you're running all these integrations and you've got different methods of connecting in, just check how robust are the APIs, how much data have you got flowing through, and as your company grows, how much data you're likely to need pushing through in the future. Measuring success. So this is for a few things, really. Success of the actual project as you're setting up the new platform once you decided on it. What issues were you trying to solve, and what do you need to be able to do from day one? Look at the KPIs you're targeting within the team and across the company. Having something in place you're reaching for will actually allow you to ask the right questions when selecting. So you'll actually be able to say, this is what good looks like. This is how we know that this implementation, change of platform succeeded. The more you know about where you want to be, the better your questions are going to be, and the more the vendors will actually have to prove that the platform is capable of doing that. Maybe ask for success stories or case studies around other other kind of companies where they've actually succeeded at this already. Which, asking all these questions brings me on to RFPs. So if you do put a kind of request for proposal in, the more detailed it is, the harder the vendors and often us as partners will have to work to complete those to get the information out for you. But a good RFP allows you to directly compare the platforms based on your own requirements. I'd encourage you not to list features, but actually be really clear. There's a lot of gray areas if you've got a list of features you're looking for with a yes, no answer. Make sure you're asking how the feature is covered. If it's out of the box, is it an add-on? Cover the pieces that aren't actually in the platform as well. What does support look like? How's training for the platform? And how do you get someone assigned for customer success? And I suppose the final thing here is, as well, is the Moscow or any other similar ranking method you want for kind of things you must have, things you should have, could have, and won't have to start, but maybe in the future. So final one now is just narrow it down to the platforms you really know are likely to match your needs, and then request demos. I've done quite a lot of vanilla demos before now where people haven't got specific asks, but just want to see the platform. And then what we usually get at the end of that is, oh yeah, that's great. It does the same as everything else. So it really doesn't benefit you having those kind of really bland demos. The more focused you can be on, here's exactly what we want to use it for, show us how that works in the platform, the more you're going to be able to get a really good feel of if you'll enjoy using the tool at the end of the day. Okay, we're moving on to the final tip. So use cases and subsequent technical requirements will ensure the MA platform you select will live up to your needs, but that's not the end. Unless the software is configured and set up to reflect your use cases, specific business and process flows, it's not actually going to be successful in answering the needs of your business anyway. This often leads to low adoption, tendency to blame the software, but ripping and replacing won't fix this. If you just move on and do the same again with another platform, you're still going to have the issue that it's not set up specifically for you. It's really important to get a good team of implementation specialists. If you call me, I know some people, so get in touch. But yeah, the more experience they have, the more implementations they've done, the more they can understand your business and the way you've set your use cases and requirements up when you came through the sales process with the vendor, and the better you're going to be set up to use your platform. Okay, well, that's it for me. I'm going to hand back to Kristin.
All right, thanks, Phil. So anyone with any questions? I have a couple questions that are going to be best suited for follow-up, and I can include those in our follow-up emails. But if you have any feedback, raise your hand in the Q&A or post your comments there. If there's any other topics that you'd be interested in seeing included in the comparison, we run this every quarter. So we can definitely do that research to add that in here, or maybe add an additional piece of content to support the comparison content or anything else. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward here. Phil, with the next. All right, thank you. So as I said, our next map comparison webinar is Wednesday, July 19th at 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. BST. Phil, what is
British
that?
summertime.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
sorry. I
Okay.
didn't want to put GMT because I'd have been wrong, but I did feel odd writing it.
No, that's okay. I should have known. I didn't feel comfortable just saying BST. Best time is what that is, right?
It's right up there in times. Yeah.
Let's see, if you have attended in the past and you have subscribed to the content, then we will, send you out an invite. If you're interested in joining again, you can certainly do that, or forward it to maybe teams within your organization that might have that interest. And as always, if you have any questions, any feedback, feel free to either email Phil directly at phil.boyden@sojournsolutions.com. You can also check it out on our website, sojournsolutions.com, and our contact us form there, and submit that. We do have some automation there to put it into play and get you right into the right hands to get follow-up. So looks like, looks like we're all good in terms of questions today. So
I'll stop the recording.
we'll be all set. Thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it.